There are lots of different syncing options available for Obsidian. You can use Dropbox, you can use Google Drive, iCloud Drive, you can use a software like Resilio Sync, which is a peer to peer sync type software. But an awesome option that a lot of folks don't consider, because it can be fairly technical and nerdy, is Git and GitHub. Hey folks, today we're going to talk about how to sync your Obsidian Vault with Git and GitHub. But first, let's talk a little bit about what these things are if you're not familiar with them. Let's chat about Git. What is Git? Git is very well known for being used in the software industry for version control. That's essentially what it is. It allows you to track changes over the period of time in a set of files. Git is very easily accessible on almost every device that you have, especially on desktops and laptops. If you have access to a terminal, you can get into Git. You can also use Git through an application like Working Copy on iOS to very easily access and modify Git repositories. Then, what is GitHub? Well, the way Git works out of the box is it tracks versions of files and changes locally on your computer. But you can push those changes to a central repository, whether you host it yourself or if you use a service like GitHub. GitHub is a place where you can create remotely hosted repositories so that you can have an offsite place to put your files. Just a few years ago, this wouldn't have worked as well because GitHub didn't offer private repositories for free accounts. But now that GitHub has private repositories, which means that only certain users that have access to them, or just yourself, now that you can create those private repositories, GitHub could be a very quality place, an easy place to store your Obsidian Vault, largely because they're just text files. Now, why would you want to sync your Vault with Git? Probably the most obvious reason is that you can kind of see the development of your Vault over time through the version control changes. I'll show you what that'll look like in just a moment. But if you're not too keen on throwing your Vault inside of Dropbox or Google Drive, Git could be a really good option as well because it's platform agnostic. You can access it on macOS, Linux, on Windows. As I mentioned previously, you can get access to it on iOS using Working Copy and actually do some automation stuff there, which we'll cover in another video. I recently converted my Obsidian Vault over to syncing with Git, and so I wanted to take a few minutes to share with you how I have that set up and how you might be able to implement this in your system as well. Let's dive in. Okay, so here I am on GitHub. This is my account, and we're looking at the repository vaults that I've created that you can see is private up here at the top. And this is where I keep all of my Obsidian vaults. These folders are my different vaults. So I've got Obsidian Made Simple, which is a vault I'm using to do demos for the Obsidian Made Simple course that I'm working on. Then this backup vault of the sweep and the sweep, which is my main vault. There's these two other files here, which we'll get into briefly. This gitignore file, which basically just tells this repository, hey, don't upload or commit files that are of this file name or in this directory. So .obsidian is a directory in each one of the vaults that has some caches and settings. You want to make sure to exclude this, or at least the obsidian/caches folder, so that you don't have conflicts that arise between different machines that you're working on. Then this sync file is a script that I have written and modified from some places that I found on the internet in order to sync these files automatically. I'll show you what this looks like on the command line doing it manually, but the way it works with Git is that you essentially have to add all of your changes that you're wanting to commit. Then you have to commit those changes to the repository locally, and then you're going to rebase that. So if you made changes on another computer, that they properly line up on your local computer, and then you push them to the remote repository on GitHub. We're not going to get into the super technical details of this. There's tons of videos out here on YouTube and articles in other places explaining this whole process. But I wanted to give you kind of a brief overview of what this looks like, and so you can get an understanding of how you might want to set this up using Obsidian and Git. let's start off by creating our own new repository. So if you have a GitHub account, you can create free and private repositories, which is fantastic. What we're going to do is go to this plus sign up here in the corner and click New Repository. Then, as you can see, there are a couple different settings here. The owner is myself, and I'm going to say my vaults. You do have to keep your repository name one word just because it works best that way. So either underscores or dashes in the name. Then I'm going to click private. And then I'm not going to check any of this stuff down here because GitHub will give us some commands where we can sync up a repository that we have created locally on our computer. So I'll click create. Then you can see we have a brand new empty repository. And there's some commands here. You can either quick setup in GitHub Desktop, or you can create a brand new repository on the command line, or push an existing repository from the command line. We'll come back to this set of commands and run them in just a second. Now I'm going to hop over to my terminal. We'll take a look at my current repository setup so you can see it locally. And then also we'll continue setting up our new vaults repository so you can see how that process works. So I'm going to run pwd so you can see where my directory is. So I'm running out of users, Justin DeRose, documents, vaults. This is my local directory. I have my terminal set up to show that it's a Git repository so you can see that it's Git initiated and it's on the master branch. If I do an ls, you can see that I've got the same files here. Git ignore, Obsidian made simple, the sweep back, and sync, which is a script. And how this works is if I head over to Obsidian and say, I'm recording the video right now, that'll make the change in that folder. So if I pop back over to my terminal session and I type git status, because this is a Git repository, what it will show is that I've made modifications to the file, the sweep, daily notes, 2020-19 or 09-15, and it'll say that these are not staged for commit. So when you have files inside of Git that are modified in a Git repository, you have to stage them for commit. And then when you have those files staged, then you can commit them. So how we would do that manually is we would do git add and then dot for all the files within the folder. And then we would do git commit. I'll do a git status in here first though. So you can see, okay, these are changes are ready to be committed. They're green now, red when they're uncommitted, or not staged rather, and green when they are ready to be committed. Then we'll do git commit, and then I'll do -m for a message. We'll just do a test commit. And there we go. It's saying that it's committed. Git status shows that the working tree is clean here, nothing to commit because we've already committed it. However, if we go back over to GitHub and the vaults repository, you can see that it's still the same commit that we had before. It's not our test commit. And so in order to get that over to GitHub, we have to do a git push. And you can see it runs through some processes here to get it over there. We'll run back over to GitHub, refresh the page, and now you can see we have our test commit. If I go through the Git history here of 50 commits, you can see all of the changes that I've made. And these are some automated commits here, daily update, daily update, daily update. And if I click into this one, you can see the diffs is what they're called in Git. You can see the differences and the changes that were made. So I've made some changes in this daily note file where we can see that I removed this line, added this line. I've added this file, sync with GitHub from the presentation at the beginning of this video. And I made some changes to the sync script to make sure that it was working properly before I got this video going. This is really nice because you can go and see exactly what changed. And for say you accidentally deleted a file, well, that file is not fully deleted in your GitHub history. You can actually go back and grab content out of that file, or you can pull that up to your most recent version and add it back again. You don't actually delete much. It's pretty great, especially when it comes to text, because it's very easy and readable inside of GitHub to manage and look at those changes and revisions over time. Okay, so let's hop back over to the my vaults repository, and we'll get that one set up. I'm going to head over to the terminal, and I'm just going to do this from the terminal for ease of use today. So in my documents folder, I am going to create a directory using the mkdir, make directory command, and I'm going to type my vault, or my vaults. And if we do an ls, you can see that I have my vaults here. We're going to cd, change directory into my vaults, and we're going to do an ls in there, and you can see it's completely empty. The first thing before we add any files or folders in here is what we're going to do is we're going to run git init. Git init is a command that will initiate this repository to be functional as a Git repository. Okay, and it says initialized empty Git repository. Awesome. You can see that my command line changed here to show that it is a Git repository. So from here, what we're going to do is we're just going to go back to Obsidian. And we're going to open another vault. We're going to create a new vault. My vault 12, just for fun. Then we're going to go under documents and then under my vaults and hit open and then create. This will open a brand new vault. I'm going to create a note. Hello to you in my vault. Should you be here? Just for fun. Okay, so we've created some files in here. We've gotten a new vault created. Let's head back over to the terminal and see what's changed. We'll do an ls, la, so you can see the files here. We'll ls my vault so you can see what's in there, and you can see that we've created that file. Awesome. If we do git status, well, you can see that we have it there. Where it's not tracked yet. So if a file has never been committed to a Git repository before, it's untracked and you still have to stage it for commit. So we'll do that now. And then what we will do is we'll commit it. We'll say first commit. And apparently I misquoted something there. Okay, well, whatever. It didn't like the exclamation point in there. So do note that there are some characters that are funky with that. So, okay, cool. If we look at git log, which shows you the log of all the commits locally, you can see that we have the commit here. So if I do a git push, oh, okay. So we don't have our remote repository set up in GitHub yet. So that's why we have to go back to GitHub and run those commands. So in order to run those commands, it's really easy. There's this copy button here. All you have to do is hit copy there, go back over to your terminal, paste, and there we go. Once that's done, we should have our files and folders set up in Obsidian, or in GitHub rather. If I refresh this page, you can see that I have my Vault 12. And you have hello to you in my vault.md. Awesome. So that's the simple basics of setting up with Git. However, you're not going to want to go through every single time you make a change to your node and get it all, staged and committed and pushed to GitHub. This was an initial thing that I found really difficult with Obsidian, or rather just note-taking in general. I've tried to use note-taking in the past on Git, and I didn't really figure out the automation stuff very well. And so that's why this time around, I've really spent some time trying to make sure this is automated and I don't have to think about it in the background and that it's just going to work. So we'll go back to the vaults directory. Actually, what we're going to do instead is we're going to copy from my vaults directory. We'll just copy this sync script over and we'll just copy it right here. And we'll just look. So, okay, we can see we've listing the files, that sync is there. One thing you might have to do if you're creating this file directly is that you're going to have to give it execute permissions on your file system. So on macOS and Linux, that's chmod +x and then the file name, so sync. That just tells the computer, say, hey, this file can be executed and run. It's a script. We want to do that. So if we look at that script again, now that we have knowledge about how this works, okay, we can see I've got some special stuff for my environment here, so you don't have to worry about this. This gstatus command, get status -- porcelain, basically just checks to see if there's any changes between the repositories or if it's a clean repository, and you can just add everything up. So if that's true, then what we're going to do is we're going to add all of the files that are changed in that repository. We're going to wait a moment. Then we're going to commit those files using an automated message. Wait a moment. Then we're going to get pull -- rebase. So that'll pull all the changes down from your repository if you've made changes on another computer. And the --rebase a parameter for that will rebase those changes. What that does is instead of creating mucky merge commits, which get really tricky to deal with, if there's commits on your repository that haven't been pulled down, it'll pull those down first, and then it'll put your new changes right on top of them. So it makes it a lot easier to see the changes that are there, plus also kind of merge in changes and sync them in from different places. Then we'll wait for a second, and then we'll git push up to the server. So that's the basics of this script. I grabbed this script from an article that I found on the internet and made some modifications to it myself. I'll put a link in the description if you're interested in taking a look at that particular script. So we've got that set up. And then if I just run /sync, which is the command to run and execute a shell script, you can see that it's doing some churning in the background. And then it's pushing. Now I do realize I probably don't need those sleep statements in there now, so I'm gonna get rid of those just because I was troubleshooting this earlier and I forgot to remove them. So we'll run sync again, and it'll run quite a bit faster. Okay. So we've created this sync script, which is great. You can go in and manually run this every single time you want to. But one thing you can do on macOS, you can use like cron jobs, which are built into the terminal to run these scripts. I don't think that's maybe the best way to go if you're just getting started with this. If you have a software like Keyboard Maestro, though, you can set up Keyboard Maestro to run this on a regular recurrence. And it's actually fairly easy to do. So let's dive into Keyboard Maestro really quick. Okay. So what I have here is I've created a brand new action. And then it's triggered periodically while logged in by repeating every 7 minutes between 8:30 and 5:30 p.m. So this will run every 7 minutes between the hours of 8:30 and 5:30. That's a pretty reasonable time frame. I want to give myself time to make changes so I'm not committing changes every couple of minutes if I'm working actively in my Obsidian vault. Plus, it's also frequent enough, though, to where if I walk away from my computer and decide to work on my other computer doing some development work or whatnot, where those changes will sync in a very reasonable time frame. So we have one action script or step here, and basically it's fairly simple. We have an execute a text script. I'm displaying results in a window right now, but I'm going to ignore those results because we don't need to necessarily see them. When we actually run the script for the purposes of this video, I'll display them in the window. And then we're going to do hash bang or the !! bin bash that just tells your script what shell you're running it in. You have to have that in order for it to execute properly. Then we're going to change directory to our vaults directory. And then we're going to run /sync. And this ampersand at the end just lets it run as an independent process. So when we hit try at the bottom here, it will run in the background. And then when it's done, it should pop up with a screen that shows us what's going on. And it very well might not too, just because it's running successfully. So let's try this out. We'll go back. And let's see, we'll go into Obsidian and we'll change vaults here again. We'll go into the sweep. Here's some extra text to test commit. Okay, so we'll go back to the command line. We'll go git status, and we'll see that we have uncommitted, unstaged changes here. Then we'll go to Keyboard Maestro, we'll hit the try button, and this will run. And we'll see. Give it just a second. Head back over to iTerm, git status. And oh, well, we have nothing to commit, working tree clean. That means that we've committed those changes and pushed them to the branch up on GitHub. So if we do git log, we can see that. We can see at 10:39, which is the time just now, that we've added an automated sync commit. This is pretty cool. It does get a little bit technical. You can see we have the results popping up here now after the push. Awesome. So this gets a little bit technical when you dig into the nitty-gritty of it. But if you're looking for a solution to version control your files that doesn't really cost any money at all, it's also a very easy way to push text and simple files like PDFs and images and certain documents back and forth. I mean, it's a really great way to do that between your different computers that you have. I hope you found this video helpful. I know setting up Git and syncing with GitHub can be a little technical, but once you get through the basics of it, it's really not too bad. And it's actually a very powerful way to sync your files between devices and also keep versioned changes so you can see the history of what's changed. If you did like this video, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe. Also, sign up for our newsletter at effectiveremotework.com/newsletter so you can get updates on our Obsidian Made Simple course that's coming out in just a couple of weeks. My name is Justin DeRose with Effective Remote Work. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you in the next video.